ready.
Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thanks very much. The next item on the agenda is the department reports, and we'll begin with Goldendale Police Department.
Thank you, Mayor. We're up to 2,180 calls for service so far today, as I got off duty today. We've increased the patrol of the parks after concerns of different activity in there. We did have one incident within the last month. We had a disorderly man cause some issues being disorderly. He was also trespassed from the property from one of the parks, Public Works. He was arrested. We found him down at the river consuming alcohol in the park, so he went to jail for that. As you can see, all of our vehicles have been restriped, except for the last two, so we are a little bit more noticeable down there. We've had some concerns where people have not, or thought they have not seen us patrolling parks and different things like that. I think now with the new logos with the side of the car, we're pretty obvious where we're at. We're kind of taking the approach that we want to be seen. If that guy knows we're coming, we're not hiding nothing. We're going to come and enforce the laws that we have on the books where we can. We're not. Our goal as a police department is to try and keep the image, the parks as clean as we can. If people are committing crimes, they will be arrested and held accountable for what they're doing. So, other than that, we're almost fully staffed again. We've got some more people going to the academy. We've got a couple more people in the hiring process still. We just had our last recruit come out of the academy, Officer Shelmorn, and she started last Sunday. So far I've been working patrol with her, and she's doing good, meeting the public, so you'll probably meet her soon. So we're just still going at it, and like I said, calls are up, so we're just trying to continue, at the rate we're going, we're going to be way over what we were in the last few years, and so we're just keep moving forward.
Good steady progress.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Noah for Goldendale Fire Department.
I've talked a lot tonight, so I'll pass.
Public Works Department, Pat Monday.
Just one quick thing, I need to, if everybody on the ordinance committee has time to meet this week, if you could provide me a time, that would be great. We need to go over a couple draft ordinances, so Public Works, last week was primarily in training, the majority of them last week, getting their required CEs for their certifications. With that, we did have some wastewater telemetry communication issues. They have been resolved. We're still not sure what caused them, but the crew went around and checked everything, and reset everything, and it seems to be functioning at this point. Other than that, I've been preparing, we're in union negotiations, and I'm preparing documents that we need for negotiations, which is going to take quite a bit of time. And then the water CPI information that the city council requested is complete, but we are not going to be able to meet with Angela until the end of the month. She is gone for the next 3.5 weeks, I believe. So, and then I'll try to get a response from Eric tomorrow. Would you guys like Eric with RH2 to come down and talk to you on the project? On the wastewater project?
Wastewater treatment plant project?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it'd be a good idea.
Yeah, so, yeah, most everything usually in wastewater is designed for 20 years. Your plant's, it's just how, that doesn't mean it's not gonna be there longer than 20 years, but that's how they're required to address it through the EPA, is they want sewer plants looked at every 20 years for functionality, and usually in 20-year increments, the EPA usually likes to change regulations on discharge. They usually make it stricter and stricter and stricter to meet their requirements. That doesn't, like I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that the infrastructure is going to be wore out at that time. But like any other piece of equipment, particularly on a mechanical piece of equipment, it's going to be running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's obviously going to need the repairs and maintenance costs. the pit chamber and all that, as long as the concrete is kept sealed and good, should last, 30 to 50 years. But that's pretty much it, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, back on, when would you, Pat, I'd like to have the ordinance meeting, Lauren, would you?
I think it'd have to be, for me, it'd have to be tomorrow late afternoon or Friday sometime. I can't do Thursday.
Yeah, I might be gone tomorrow afternoon. I think I have to go with the Dallas. What about you, Ellie? You got,
I'm available anytime after
Okay.
1:30.
So Friday work for everybody then?
yeah, it works for me. Does it work for you?
Friday, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
That's your
2 o'clock, Miley?
2 o'clock, okay, that'll be fine.
So Friday the 8th?
Yeah.
Thanks, Pat, thank you. The next item is council business, and this is the water service outside city connection request that Pat will present.
Yeah, so why these keep coming for you, so I provided this. So the city has a city ordinance that says all water connections outside city limit take city council's authorization. The city has also adopted this, which
Can
was
you go
their
to the other side so Nancy can see it?
so which is their 20-year master plan. The property we're talking about is inside this 200-foot boundary up on Pipeline. Anything inside this checkered area is considered by your guys' plan as your water service area. And that's where, I don't know if you guys read what I wrote, but if it's inside your water service area, it doesn't matter, the state doesn't look at it as city limits or outside city limits, it looks at it as inside your service area. So the applicant's property is inside the service area. And there's 4 elements to calculate the questions you kind of ask yourself on that I provided in the response of how it's looked at. Can the water be provided in a timely manner? Is water available? That applies throughout the whole city, not just particularly to the outside. And the other element on this particular property, and I provided that to you in 1912, when the city obtained, sorry about that, an easement for the water line that came down there. They entered into agreement with that property owner, and the documents in the packet that the city would provide them water when they went to develop the property. So that's why that application comes to you. You would have to, you guys could change your ordinance to say that it goes off, based off of your service area, or leave it as it is. And these are gonna keep coming in front of you guys. Or you could, I guess, update your plan and take it outside the service area, but you got services out there already. There's quite a few services through here. I drove out there and looked, so.
I would say, if we have a contract that the right-of-way contract says that we were going to provide water to them, we shall. The only other thing I would ask is, as they come in from outside the city limits, if they specify whether they're in this right-of-way or if they're out. Because we had talked about.
You mean inside the service area
Yeah,
boundaries?
sorry, yeah, because we had talked about the, holding off on any new additions until we figured out what the water.
Yeah, if they're outside
Status
the
was.
service area, we don't consider them. But because this is the adopted service area, that's what we're going by.
Any other questions or comments?
So, do we make a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the water application application as stated and as it was agreed upon back when the right-of-way was made.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. Any further questions or comments before I present the motion? It's been moved and seconded to approve the water connection application pursuant to the terms provided in the September 9th, 1912 agreement. If there's no further comments or questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Just one quick question, does the council want to make a change to the service area? 'Cause if we're gonna have to do that, and that doesn't mean you stop serving people out there, but if you wanna tighten up your service area, then we would have to update our map.
I would say that we need to figure out what the status of the entire water system is. I think we would do that, right?
I bought a report, I can get you another copy of that report, several months back and presented to the council from, that had to talk about what improvements needed to be, where we were, what improvements needed to be to the water system of
Right,
Wilson.
yeah, we needed some improvements there.
Yes, and those are built into the CIP. And those modifications that need to be done. Yes, it's true that the water table has dropped. The production of the spring has dropped. You know, we can do a more in-depth analysis. I can have Tim look at that. But yes, do we still have water available to sell? Yeah. But we can come up with a tighter, because it wasn't looked at that way in the future, or in the past, with the direction, come up with a tighter, say, okay, how many services can we provide water to? I mean, we have a number by the state, but based on the decline has stabilized on everything. Some of that, I believe, is the water table, some of that, as the report states, you know, their theory is some of that is the wells, you know, they've been in the ground for over 20 years. You know, you got bowl wear, which bowls are the things that make the water come up. You have bowl wear, you have motor wear, you have probably plugged screens down there that you need to go down there and open them back up and cut some more in, let some more water in. And hopefully those things will improve. But we also put in the CIP down from the pump up above, I think, what do they call it, the chlorine station pump, which is up on, or up by the observatory, or is it on? Pipeline. So, that coming down closer to the river in that same aquifer and drilling another well to help counter offset that, that lossage that the city have incurred. I mean, you guys are great, the city's great on water rights. The city is infrastructure, is in, you know, with the projects we're doing is in the next couple of years. I mean, you guys are going to be, other than some, maybe some little tiny lines here or there, but the main infrastructure is in great shape. I mean, Goldendale's done a fantastic job over time keeping up with their water infrastructure. And I think that's what really helps them know as well. I mean, for fire flow, you guys have fire flow capability. It would be nice to have, which, you know, was one of the other things that was placed in the CPI, is another reservoir, which every reservoir is designed with so many gallons based on the need for additional fire flow storage only. So when we're pumping water and fluctuating, backing up, that lower third of that water, or even sometimes 40% of that water, is set aside, even though it circulates, but that's set aside for fire flow. So that's kind of how it's looked at in the system.
And I think two things that would help, like you mentioned, is having a number of how many I don't anticipate like that many homes all of a sudden popping up to add outside of the city limits. But having an idea of how many we can support fairly without losing the capabilities of the city would be good. And then the other thing is knowing how many other agreements we have in the right of way that have, that agreement that they were gonna get water, so that we can
Boy,
anticipate.
that'll take some research from.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
not, but to foresee the future and plan out
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, I guess search every property out there.
Or at least, as the applications come in, then, let us know, okay, this one,
Yeah.
somebody gave their word back in 19 whenever.
Well, I planned on, that's why last one, I just said staff would be present, I planned on being present when I was,
If you
because of
can
the smoke.
avoid any asthma attacks,
Yeah.
that would be great.
I think there's an issue there, Roberto, I think you bring up a good point, maybe we should refer it to Public Works Ordinance Committee to dig into a little more deeply and come back.
Well, that was my question, would this go to the ordinance or public works? Would it go to ordinance if the council
Well,
wants?
yeah, it would be an ordinance or a policy change if they
Okay.
wanted to change their service area. The service area, this is pretty common what cities do when they've allowed expanding outside city limits, and then they end up drawing these little, you can see all these little figures here that are following road widths. I mean, you have a ton of these, and this all the way out here as well. So that's kind of what's creating some of the, why they put these in the service area. And each one of these is I want to say 200 foot. So you're 100 foot each side of that water line that you're saying that's inside the service area. If you got rid of a lot of these fingers, it would be pretty tight to, as you can see, pretty tight to the city limits. Now this one would need to stay because that goes out to a well that the city owns, but it's not used.
Yeah, so if it's the council's wish, then it'll go to the ordinance committee, and we can
Yeah.
talk about it, then bring it back to the council.
Yeah, we can do that. We can actually talk about that Friday. if you
Yeah,
guys
okay,
want, so.
okay.
And then do you want me to, I can talk to Tim about coming up with a more, we can put it in the terms of connections, but connections are going to vary. So every time we'll have to make an adjustment based on that. So, and what I mean by that, because a normal household takes a 3/4, 5/8 meter. So if that neighbor or that house comes in and says, I want a 1 inch or 2 inch meter, then we're gonna have to recalculate that every time to see where we're at hydraulically. I mean, I've talked to Tim about this several times, and Tim, keeps assuring me, we're fine, we're fine, we're fine. But I'll have him put it in something that's more of an official document.
Can you do like 5 of this size, 5 of this size, 20 of these? So then as you get like a 1 inch,
Well,
you can say, okay, that's
what
the
we'll
5
do
before we
is
have to
we'll
recalculate.
calculate in out at 5/8, 3/4 with a total demand, gallons per minute. And then if one comes in with a larger meter size, we know what that gallons per minute can produce out, then we'll just subtract that number. Does that make sense?
Now, I'll be careful on this one because I don't know enough details, but talking about like fire protection and, the whole stopping a fire outside of town. I know there was that fire hydrant placed out in Centerville, is that right? Out there in
Well,
Centerville?
me and Noah were talking about this earlier, and so everybody knows how white salmon sits on a bluff. So one of the things we planned on, which it hasn't ever gotten installed, was along the bluff line, is to use the main sprinkler lines and bring big gun sprinklers off of that. So you got a really good resource here, in here where you could actually put those same type of guns on that and in a fire, call those sprinklers on. If a fire's moving in this direction. And you could do the same thing up here, if a fire was moving across here, or you're worried about back burn, and do the same
Kind of
thing.
like the observatory go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then how, the benefit and the cost of putting a fire hydrant further out pipeline? 'Cause I know like,
So that was talked about several years ago
Mhm.
when Carl was here. And I'm pretty sure it was approved, it just never got finished, but I could be wrong on that. But basically out by Ponderosa Park, there was talk about putting a fire hydrant out in that area.
So,
because there's
yeah.
been a few fires out there.
Well, Noah and I talked about it today. I don't believe when this was brought in, it was kind of confusing why I'm trying to stand out of the way here. There should have been some fire hydrants put along this as well. I don't think there's anything until you get closer to town.
There's one further out.
Is there one out here further?
It's further, yeah, and I'm drawing a blank where road it's on, but.
And then, yeah, but we could put, yeah, roughly right now, I would say
Maybe.
my fire hydrant
There's
is
a standpipe on
$8,000
That's what we're thinking
to
about.
9 or 10.
So maybe the county can help offset that cost since it helps residents out in the county?
Yeah,
Well, I would think the priority would be up there on the hills there.
yeah. Well, the only thing I would do on those is, we'll put what's called breakaway lockers on it. So you can break them away, and we do that when they're, get out in rural areas, so that when somebody drives by and checks that hydrant, they can tell somebody's been on there. And, you know, and we definitely want the fire department to let us know when they've been on there. Because if they're breaking away, that means somebody's getting into it and stealing water. And-
Even if they have a shut off down below that you can access.
Well, but yeah, you can shut it off in the ground, but that's not gonna help you in a fire situation unless if you have a valve key to get into it. So, I mean, the best scenario is to leave them open,
With that lock.
and then what I've done in the past is we go out there and put camera systems in and see who's taking water. But it doesn't take much of a camera system, I got probably 10 of them at home, so.
Any other comments or questions? The next item on the agenda that we'll cover is the number J, ordinances. There's ordinance number 1528 and 1529. And Pat and Sandy will provide information on both of these. We'll start with 1528 and see whether that's adopted and the one after that.
So 1528 so the original approved estimates included cash carryover, and they didn't need to. So basically, we just took out the cash carryover, so that's what 1528 is correcting. So the red line version is in there, that tells what we changed, what they originally were approved at, and what they need to be changed to. And then the report is attached that shows that the financial statement matches what the red line version is.
And so ordinance 1529 is,
We have to do one at a time.
all right.
They have to do a
Okay,
motion
yeah,
for
sorry.
each one.
Yeah, we start with 528. Any questions from the council on the, particularly the red line area, or anything else referring to this particular ordinance?
I move to approve ordinance number 1528, correcting ordinance number 1524, which is the 2023 budget, to correct appropriations.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 1528, correcting ordinance number 1524, which is the 2023 budget, to correct appropriations.
So,
Any further questions? If not, we'll call for a vote. favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The next item is ordinance number 1529, and the same will be presented by Pat Munyon and Sandy Wells.
There's a typo there again, so. We should have put 24.
No, 1524 is the one we're correcting with 1529. 1524 is the
Okay.
budgeted ordinance. Nope, you did it right.
Okay. So, yeah, so the, because you did ordinance 1528, didn't you?
Yeah, so now
Okay.
you're doing
Okay,
1529.
ordinance 1529 is adjusting current expense fund, increasing in its appropriation amount of $117,000 to cover increased costs during business revenue. To cover the increased appropriations will come from available cash reserves. So the park fund increased appropriation amount was $32,000 to cover several capital outlay projects, including the gazebo revenue. To cover the increased appropriations will come from the inter-fund transfer from current expense. The economic development fund is increased appropriations in the amount of 1,100,000. That actually just has to do with the grant that we got for the incubator business facility. Because it wasn't in there, that money will all be completely reimbursed. The drug enforcement and investigation fund increased appropriation in the amount of $3,000 to cover increased expenses of the city's K-9. I believe this was because the dog was injured and had to have surgery early on in the year. So the tourism fund increased appropriation in the amount of $19,000 to cover increased expenses related to the city expenses for the maintenance of the community day and demolition derby. And the wastewater fund increased appropriation in the amount of $140 to cover increased costs to the operation of the wastewater and sewer department and the public works trust fund for the citywide improvement project, which part of that money should be covered by also the grant funding or the loan funding in these cases, not grant funding. Both of these are loans. So those expenses should be covered as well, once we ask for reimbursement.
What's the 19,000 on number 5, the visitor information building and community days and demolition derby? Because most of those were covered by the,
So far, year to date, there hasn't been enough revenue to come in to cover all those expenses yet.
okay. So community days and the demo derby is covered under the
Hotel motel.
hotel motel.
Yeah.
And then the other building, is that like costing a lot, or
What?
how much is for each one of those?
Well, the original chamber contract was budgeted for $39,000, and the tourism committee offered to give them $45,000. So it will just basically is changing our budget
Yeah.
numbers.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Can we get a breakdown of the expenses for community days? Just curious to see what their
I
costs
believe
are.
I just got that from the chamber, so I can,
Do you want it for every one more, or just the chamber, or?
No, just for the Chamber of Commerce, just for the community days event. I'm just kind of curious what the community days cost us and what some of the higher expenses are and what opportunities might be out there.
Yeah, we have that, we can print it out.
I think we have already.
And I was also curious about the, it says for the parks, it's for supplies for capital improvements at the parks, including the gazebo, but what did that include besides the gazebo? What other capital improvements were made at the parks?
Primarily the capital, the gazebo.
It was
That
mostly
was the big
gazebo.
thing, yeah. When we, as you guys recall, when we started that project, that was more just to replace skirting that we believed was asbestos, and then when we pulled the skirting out, at some point, somebody had replaced the deck up above the tracks, and we assumed that everything else was in good shape underneath, and it was not. It was dry rotted. So we removed it, and as reported earlier this year, we replaced it all with concrete, and we ended up doing some repairs to the roof. There had been beams on the roof that had been cut and spliced back in. We pulled those out and put the beams back in correctly. And then we put a metal roof on it to preserve it. And currently the railing is not up, but it's being built out of Public Works, which is steel railing that will be going in and bolted in. If you guys haven't looked at it, it turned out really nice.
These are really very long-term improvements. It'll make quite a difference for that gazebo. Any further questions or comments on this ordinance to be adopted? If not, do we have a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 1529, amending ordinance number 1524, increasing appropriations in several funds as presented.
I'll second it.
If there's no further questions, we'll call for a vote.
These expenses are already incurred, there's no changing it, right? So,
The pavilion or the gazebo, is that what you're talking about?
all of them, I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 1529, amending ordinance number 1524, 2023 budget, increasing appropriations in several funds as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the report of officers, and we'll begin with the council. And one thing I want to remind you of, the things that are commented on by council members and the mayor are things on the agenda, or things that need to be on the agenda in the future, but with that leading to a motion or actual action. When we don't have a motion, they're just ideas. So it takes that step, and that's what happened with one of them. A motion was never made. It was talked about. Everybody seemed to feel good about it, but no action was taken. It requires it to actually be on the agenda and an ordinance or a change be made. So, and I think it's just, I need to clear that up because I don't know if that's always followed or fully understood. With that, we'll begin with Dave Jones.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Hey, I just wanted to let everybody know that this is the 50th anniversary of the Goldendale Observatory this year. It was October 14th, 1973. So I did a quick math on that, that's 50 years. And coincidentally, that's also the date of the next solar eclipse on October 14th. I think they planned it out that way back when they first dedicated the observatory to make it so the 50th anniversary landed on an eclipse.
They would do that.
That's a guess, I don't know if that happened for sure. But anyways, there's,
Pretty good guess.
right, there's gonna be a celebration up at the observatory, so mark that on your calendars if you're available, October 14th.
Very good.
That's all I have to thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Good reminder of that, too. Lauren? Ellie? Andy?
I'm good.
Wow, you guys are going great. Philberto?
Well,
Try.
I just want to thank everybody, and again, one more thank you to Jeff King, Frank Huey, and Chief Holm for presenting us to us today. I know my email was a little convoluted. Just to clarify, some of the things that I bring up as council, and if it belongs to one of my other positions, then I will specify as that, because it is being involved in different organizations and working for the county, I have to specify and make sure that it is not causing a conflict of interest. So I know there was some assumptions made and confusion there. But just want to thank them for willingly coming in, and I didn't have to beg too much. The other thing is just letting you guys know I will be out of town next council meeting, so I'll ask for my excuse absence now.
Okay.
I'll be on vacation finally. And then other than that, that's all.
I'm gonna ask Sandy to make a note on that as a reminder, so you don't have to worry.
Right.
Thank you for that, John. Alan?
Well, Mayor, I just want to say it was great to meet the young mayor, the mayor of the day, and so pleased that he was here, and I think that's a very good program that we have going here to have somebody come in each year, so. That's all I have here.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
Can we put on the agenda, since you mentioned that we need a motion, can we put on the agenda to create a program where we can recognize certain individuals in the community that do outstanding community service or work for our community? I know we've talked a few times, but I think we need something to be brought forth, maybe
For a
make a motion
Yes.
and create a committee for that.
I think it'd be quite a substantial list, too. It's good.
Is that gonna be bi-monthly, monthly, annually?
I'll leave it to the events committee, but maybe quarterly? I mean, I think we're so far behind, we can probably do a monthly one. Dave's over there smiling, he has a list already, so. Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. So that would be something that we'll look at as future work. And on the mayor's side, I really appreciated the efforts made to support our mayor of the day coming. That was a lot of very thoughtful additions to the program for the experiences that young man had. And I think it's a real benefit for the city to see the quality of our young people and offer things of intellectual interest, because it may change the projections of somebody's life and what they want to study, because they learn a lot from what this city does, and it's a positive thing for any citizen to know more about how their city actually operates. Not necessarily the mayor, but those other people. On the other item, most of our council program really is more discussion than a formal Robert's Rules type of meeting. And I think it's more productive that way. But we have to make sure, really make sure, whenever we're discussing different things like that, that we're doing things that are appropriate for being in council. And those things that, particularly if there's complaints or questions or wanting to know more about it, something that one department or individual or whatever is getting involved with outside the council, I mean city employees, that needs to come to me so that I can work it out and get it done. It's not something we should be going through in open council. That's something I think very important that we adhere to, because we have quite an impact from the last meeting on the Public Works Department, and that's a severe thing because of the things that were said, and I'm not sure the recovery will ever completely be there. But we're very concerned about that. So, but I think we can do it. It's a very smart council. It's, in most cases, a very well-prepared council. The mayor's a little lacking, but otherwise, that better not be in the report. But everybody's trying to do their best, and we know that, we understand that. But some things belong outside the council, open public discussion that we can work on. They don't need to be in an executive session. This is just not criticizing individuals wherever. In a meeting like this, bring it to the mayor will get the facts or talk to or have a meeting with them and whoever's got criticism to talk with that department head and work it out. We need to do that for the sake of our staff. I think everybody is involved in making this city better, and that includes helping our city staff and the things that they face in their own professions. First thing when I read the report and some of the things that were there, it reminded me of the snow we had at Christmas that we all enjoyed in front of the fireplace, but not the public works. They were either shoveling or preparing equipment, all that, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving. These things seem to follow the holidays very often, and it's the public works fellows that have all the certifications to do that work. They're not just guys that came on and said, oh, I'm going to help you with this and that. These are specific trained professionals, and we need to respect that aspect of their professions. And that's all I have to say on that matter. Pat, I know you give most everything you want under public works.
The only other question I have is McKinney, Mid-Columbia Economic Development.
Oh, that's right. We got an email from Mid-Columbia Economic Development. That's a kid over in the Downs. They have a board of directors. And the person who's been representing Goldendale and the county, I believe, or Goldendale, that space has become vacant, and they're calling for people that might be interested. I've talked with a few. And if somebody wants to talk about that, my suggestion is Mylan Walden, because of his active involvement in the funding for these different projects. I've talked to Mylan about it, and lost a little bit of color for a while, but
Yeah, the other committee, I believe I know that the director and some of the members that are on that committee. Yeah, if the council wishes me to have that, I would do it for a while, yes.
okay. We have consensus on that.
I consensus that.
We could come back. Thank you all. Next item is public comment. Anyone here to make any public comment, either on the line or here in the council chamber? Hearing none, we'll call for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second?
It's moved and seconded to adjourn city council for September 6, 2023. Way quicker than we expected for this year.
You said the 6th.
We got a vote, right? Or what? What have I got? Forgotten.
You said the wrong date. It's the 5th today.
Oh, that's right. All of my appointments are on the 6th. That's why I'm on the 6th already. I'm busy, guys. Now, do we have a motion to adjourn?